guys, it's Arielle. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I hope you guys are all doing well. If you're new here, please don't forget to subscribe, and if you do like this video, please give it a thumbs up. So today will be the first of two videos on the general topic of how I chose my master's program. I want to make these videos for you guys because I get so many questions asking for advice or for tips or for help in choosing your master's program, and so I want to share my experience, share my thought process, share my path, and I'm hoping that will help you guys out. That being said, I might not mention everything you're curious about, so if I do forget something on this topic, please leave your questions down in the comments below. So today, the first video is going to be on why I chose a public school instead of a private school for my master's program. Then the second video, which I'll be posting next week, will focus more on how I chose my program, the websites I used, the process I went through to sort of help give you some tips on how to look for your master's program. That being said, let's get right into the video. The first reason that I chose to go with a public school for my master's degree as opposed to a private school is simply because of the cost. Initially, I had only been looking at private schools. That's what had been recommended to me by my French friends. That's what I had read online. So I really had only been focused on the private schools. And the thing is, in Canada, education is very expensive. My undergrad that I did in Canada cost me about 40 grand. So I was used to the idea of taking out a student loan and paying a lot of money for your undergrad and even more money for your master's. So it didn't shock me when I saw the prices of the private schools in France. I was looking at mostly business schools because what I was interested in studying was sort of focused around the business of events, the business of tourism, the business of like restoration and hotellery. Like I was really interested in that sort of customer service business aspect. And I figured because I was planning on moving to France and to Paris that would be a useful degree because there is so much tourism in that part of France. So at first I was just considering like a 2-year master's program within these private schools, and it was ranging between about 10 to 15,000 euros a year, which would bring the total of my degree to 30,000 euros, which is relatively on par with what you would pay in Canada. For a master's program, you'd pay about 45,000 Canadian dollars, which is sort of the equivalent to like a 30,000 euro master's degree. Then I found this MBA program in this private school that I was super interested in. It was 35K for like a year and a half or something, and I was fully committed to doing that, like fully committed. I did all the application, I did all the interviews, I got accepted, and I even sent them my deposit, which was 1,500 euros. And I was like full speed ahead. But what stopped me is that I stumbled on the public schooling website and I saw the catalog of prices and my mind was blown. Here I was ready to pay 35,000 euros for a program when the public school master's program was 200 euros a year. 200 euros. I don't even know what percentage difference that is between 200 euros and 35,000 euros, but it is astronomical. So as soon as I saw that, I thought, damn, you really need to pump the brakes. You might just be making like a really stupid decision, Arielle. That being said, I did enter into my master's program about 3 years ago and I graduated last year. So I was still part of the international students that got to benefit from paying the same prices as other French students, as other European students. I do know that since then they have tried to increase the tuition rates to I think 5,000 or 7,000 euros, which I think is questionable, right? Because then you are really nearing into the private school territory, and I have to say the facilities themselves are definitely not on par, like public versus private. So I'm not too sure if it's fair that they're asking the same price as private schools, but I don't think that all universities are affected by this. I do still think that you can find master's programs that do accept international students and ask them to pay the same price as French students, which is about 200 euros a year. Now, the second reason that I decided to go with a public school as opposed to a private school for my master's degree is probably the most important reason, so please listen up. I was doing my master's program with a long-term goal in mind. I knew that if you completed a 2-year master's program, you could apply for naturalization and citizenship after only having been in the country for 2 years. If you don't do your master's degree in France, you have to live in France for 5 years before you can ask for nationality. I also had in mind that maybe if I didn't want to apply for naturalization in the end, or if that process became too hard, I knew that once you did complete a 2-year master's program, you were eligible for the APS visa or the Recherche Emploi Création d'entreprise visa as well, which automatically sort of qualifies you to have a 1-year working visa after your master's degree. Sort of the end goal of this master's degree was not only to be like more wise in my education, but it was also have the opportunity, the potential, and the paperwork to stay in France even after my degree. If this is also a goal or something you want to consider following your master's degree, you really do have to be very careful about the school you pick. Why? Because in order for you to qualify for the APS visa or for the Recherche Emploi Création d'entreprise visa, or even for naturalization, your school has to be reconnu par l'État. It has to be acknowledged by the French government. And while obviously all public schools are acknowledged by the French government, not all private schools are accepted. And it would really suck to do a full master's degree program, to spend thousands of euros to get to the finish line and be told, sorry, you cannot have the APS visa, sorry, you cannot apply for naturalization because we do not recognize the institution where you studied. So once I read that piece of information, I didn't even want to play with fire. I was like, there is no way I'm taking any risks. I know what I'm here for. I know the visa I need after this. I really have to make sure that I'm playing it safe, that I'm following all the rules, and that my paperwork will be nickel by the end of it. So at this point, all signs were leading me to public school. It was cheaper, and there was a 100% guarantee that the diploma that I would receive following my studies would be accepted by the French government for future visas and for naturalization. So for me, at this point, my decision was 100% made. I was going with public school. That being said, I do want to share with you guys a third reason that sort of made me second guess and question whether or not the private school system was the right system for me. And that's because I wasn't sure that the private schools would be recognized internationally. And because I'm an international student, because I intend on working internationally, I really needed to make sure that the school or the university that I was going to was fully recognized, like, around the world, but especially back home in Canada where I'm from. The first glaring difference for me between public and private is that the public schools are all called université. They're all under like this umbrella of a university. I personally went to a journalism school, but that school was under the overarching university system. So on my resume, on my diploma, it is written journalism school at blah 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 university. Private schools, on the other hand, are mostly called école, école de commerce, école de management, school. We have university and we have school. And for me, from my own personal experience in Canada, when you think of the two terms, university and school, oftentimes university will be considered by people as sort of a higher level of education than a school. I'm not too sure if that's how it is in your countries, but to me, right off the bat, I was really freaked out by school versus university. On top of that, there are just so many private schools in France. It almost feels like there's like no regulation. Anything can be called a business school or a private school. And I think that's why the French government has this whole like recognition system where not all private schools are eligible for the visas and the naturalization that followed the degree. Like, what I mean is to have that visa and to have the ability to naturalize into France, you have to attend a school with like accreditations and that is recognized. And I know so many international students who came to France, came to study at a private school because most of them are pretty easy to get into. Like, if you can pay the fees, you pretty much can get in. And as someone who applied to both private and public, I know that the public system was so much harder for me to get into. I had to write tests, I had to do interviews. It was a much more lengthy process where a lot of the private schools, if I just applied and I paid the like reservation fee, my spot was guaranteed. This is just me rambling at this point, but what I just mean by this whole word vomit is that not all private schools in France will be recognized internationally. If you really have your heart set on a private school, I definitely would like Google that school and see where it falls on like the world ranking of like top universities, because honestly, most of the private schools that I applied to and that I got into fell lower than some of the public schools in France. So there you have it. We have cost, we have eligibility for visas and other paperwork, and international recognition. And those are the three reasons that influenced me to choose a public master's degree program as opposed to a private master's degree program. To close this video, I do just want to share with you guys my experience because I have studied both in public and private institutions. To be perfectly honest with you, from my experience, the education in both public and private is pretty similar. Private definitely did not feel like a higher education to me. It didn't feel like I was paying more to have like some sort of elite education. I would say there's definitely a difference in professors. In public school, it's much more academic, I want to say, where your teachers are like qualified professors, whereas mostly in the private school that I went to, my professors or my teachers were professionals who were sharing their experience and sort of giving you more of a hands-on approach to your field of study. Both were very interesting. One was much more theoretical and academic based, and the other one was very much more hands-on and practical based. I do want to say that in the private school, because my teachers were like professionals essentially who came in to teach us a little bit, you can network and you can make connections. I added them all on LinkedIn, and when I was looking for a job, I reached out to them. So I will say it's useful for that. That being said, I just also want to say that going to a public school does not mean that you will not succeed in your career, in your life. It doesn't mean that you won't succeed in finding a job in the field that you are passionate and that you love. I personally initially wanted to go into the luxury industry to work for a big brand like Chanel, Louis Vuitton, and a lot of people told me you'll never succeed unless you go to a private school. The private school are recognized by those high-end, multi-billion-dollar industries, and if they have the pick, they will choose a private school graduate as opposed to a public school graduate. And that was really disheartening to hear, and it definitely made me second guess my decision. That being said, I am super successful professionally, and I did my full degree in a public school. I did my internship for my master's degree at a huge luxury business. I had a really important role. I had a really important position. I had a really interesting and like well-paid internship. And everyone told me I would never have that unless I went to private school. And so, you know, don't sell yourself short. Don't sell your program short. If you're ambitious, if you have the work experience, you will succeed no matter what. You don't need the networking. You don't need the private school. You don't need to pay those private school tuition rates just to succeed. Like, you are enough and you'll get there. I don't know what to say other than I was able to achieve my dreams and to achieve professional success with a public school master's program. I just hate this whole stereotype that private school is just so much more elite than the public school. It's just truly not the case. So in my opinion, I wouldn't let that deter me from choosing a public school program if I were you. Anyways, this video has just turned into like a ramble rant. I don't know. I hope this was useful. I hope this answered maybe some of the questions you had, or, you know, gave you a different perspective in choosing your program and choosing whether or not you do public and private. I do have to say I'm probably biased because I'm clearly leaning more to one side. So yeah, if you are trying to make the decision, I'd probably go watch someone else's video who's like pro private school. That way you have a balanced perspective. I hope this was useful. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any comments or questions on this topic, please leave them down below. Don't forget, next week I will be posting a video talking to you guys about how I actually picked my program and giving you guys my tips and tricks and websites and all that. So please stay tuned if you are interested, if you want that help. And yeah, that is all. I will see you guys in my next video.